Hello, hello. Today I come to you from my sewing table because my scraps hoarding has reached an all-time record. An all-time high or an all-time low, depending on your opinion of whether or not I am crazy, which I also sometimes debate. So, some of you are aware that I have a clothing brand where I make clothes out of towels. It's called Coastal or Coast Towel. Not really sure how I like it to be pronounced, but when I make clothes out of towels, I usually cut off the selvage part of the towel, and actually I'm going to need a prop. So let's take this towel for example. This thicker edge I usually cut off and I use it for other scraps projects that I've actually shown on this channel before, like my tote bag or my sling bag or my Kindle case cover, things like that. The rug, I have used the thicker hem of the towel to make those kinds of projects. And in a lot of projects I end up using the thinner side hem of the towel. I usually do incorporate that. I cut the towel so that this would be like the top of a pocket, or I use it instead of having to like serge a side of the shorts or something like that. So I use this fairly frequently. And then there was a season of projects where I was cutting this side hem off of the towel and I was just throwing them all away. And I was thinking, well, I use the big hem for projects. Should I start saving the little hem for projects? And now I have this entire bag full of the tiny little side seams of towels. So I've gotten myself into some trouble here because now I actually have to do some projects with them because it's getting out of hand. So today I wanted to try to make a wallet. My wallet that I currently have in my purse is thrashed and just isn't doing the job anymore. Things keep falling out of it. So I'm going to make a new wallet. I'm thinking just a simple rectangular design that kind of folds in on itself using these little scraps. After measuring my cards and stuff, I've decided that my rectangle needs to be about 4 inches by 9 inches. And I think I'm actually gonna add 0.5 inches to each of these measurements just to give me some wiggle room with the sides. I did actually end up tweaking that design a little bit as I started sewing, but the concept remains the same. I needed to make some rectangles that were about 4.5 inches wide. So I just started picking out some scraps that were long enough and sewing them together with a zigzag stitch. While I was sewing, I was actually cutting the strips to about 5.5 inches of length just to make sure that I had enough room to really cut it down into straight lines after everything was all sewed together, just because things get a little bit jaggedy as I'm adding on row after row of fabric. And something I learned from when I made my rug out of little strips of fabric is that when you're sewing them together, you should alternate the direction that you're sewing. So I would sew down one direction as I attached the stripe, and then I would flip it around and sew down the other direction for the next stripe. And so I kept alternating the direction in which I sewed to prevent too much bowing or twisting of the fabric. I also decided that working with smaller sections was a lot better and a lot easier to keep everything from twisting or warping as I sewed. So I broke these rectangles down into sections and I would just sew about 3 inches together at a time. Once the little rectangle got to about 3 inches, then I would switch to a new one and I would start sewing new strips together. So so that they always remained kind of small chunks of fabric, and that just helped everything stay a little bit more crisp. Okay, I'm finally moving you to a little bit of a better angle here so that you can see how exactly I'm attaching these strips together. I'm just using a zigzag stitch, and I'm just pushing the strips together as I sew. So the zigzag stitch is the only thing that's connecting them. They do not overlap at all. They just sit side by side next to each other. And then the zigzag stitch adds a fun little detail while connecting them. And then again, alternating the direction that I'm sewing so that nothing gets too warped. So as you can see, I went down this way and then I flipped it around, and I'll be going down the other direction to attach the next strip. It's very hard to control the lighting here since my machine light is so bright, but hopefully you can see enough to tell what's going on. Then once I decide that the section is big enough, I take it off the machine and start a new section, and at the end I will connect all the sections together. So this is what one of the little sections look like. This one I did just about 1.5 inches, and then it was kind of bending a little bit, so I stopped there. Now here are two of my bigger sections that I'm connecting to make one big rectangle, and this will be the main outside shell of the wallet. And now on to the cutting. So what I have so far is this larger rectangle and then two little smaller rectangles, which will be the inside pockets for the card. I'm using this little carnival card to demonstrate what it will look like. I think I made the pockets a little bit too deep at the beginning. This is all experimental, so it's a work in progress. And then I did cut down the main rectangle to be 4.5 inches by 6 inches. So it's 4.5 inches wide and 6 inches long. And when I fold it in half, which is how the wallet will be, the cards will fit in nicely. So that's a good wallet size. Then I use the shape of that rectangle to cut the pocket slats down to size. And I ended up deciding that these pockets were a little bit too deep. The card was barely sticking out at the end, even taking into consideration the seam allowance that will be at the bottom. So I removed one of the strips on each side, and it was a much better length after that, so that I'll actually be able to see my cards when they're inside my wallet, but they'll still stay in very securely. And now it's time for the lining. I am using some of my old denim cutoffs that I happen to have lying around from pants that I've turned into shorts, and I thought that would make a cute lining. It's kind of a thinner denim, but still adds some structure. The big rectangle, I cut down the lining exactly to size. The little pocket pieces, I added about 1/4 of an inch at the top because I will need to turn it under to make a nice little hem on the pockets. And then one little last piece of denim that I need is a little rectangle to make a kind of strap closure thing. And that's actually the first thing that I'm going to sew. So I just sewed down the side. I folded the rectangle in half, sewed down the side, and then turned it right side out. Easier said than done because the denim, although it is a little bit stretchy, it is not very cooperative. So after some struggle that I won't show you the full length of, I was able to manage to turn it right side out. And at this point, I realized I should have actually pressed the seam open while it was inside out. but I was not going to go through the struggle of turning it out again. So I just press it down with my fingers and these tweezers as flat as possible. And then I sewed down some lines on the sides of the rectangle just to make sure that it was a flat and sturdy little strap that I'm going to use to close the wallet. Also, side note, I'm sorry, I thought this was going to be a really good angle, but my right hand keeps getting in the way. So this is how I'm going to attach my strap. I want it to connect to the outside of the wallet so that when I fold the wallet up, it can snap onto the other side and keep everything closed. So to attach it, I found the center of the wallet and just sewed it on with a classic little square and X design that seems to be a sturdy attachment for straps. So here's what it looks like, and I will be able to bend it back to have room to attach my binding all around my border binding or border all the way around the wallet after I sew it. So here's kind of what it'll look like. It'll bend in half. The strap will close it. Now I just need to add my tag and a snap. And then the outside details will be finished. So I sewed on my tag. I pushed a snap thing through the side and hammered that in nicely. And this is all of the details that I will need for the outside of the wallet. Now I can attach the lining. So I'm just using a stay stitch to go around the very edge of the wallet just to secure the lining to the wallet to make sure that it doesn't shift around as I'm sewing the rest of the pieces on. Looking good. And I'm doing the same thing to the little pocket pieces, except there's one little difference in that I want the denim to have a nice border. I don't want it to have a raw edge sticking out. So I'm going to sew it on like this with the idea that I will be able to fold it over afterwards and the top will be a nice clean finish. So something kind of like this. And then of course I'm doing one more line of top stitching after I fold down the lining so that it stays all in place. And this is what it looks like. The denim stretched slightly as I was sewing it, so I will have to cut off the excess. And then I just did a stay stitch around the whole thing to make sure everything else is staying in line. Once I got all of the linings attached to all of the pieces, it was time to attach the pieces together. So I set the pocket piece on top of the big rectangle and just used a stay stitch to go all the way around. I'm just using a stay stitch right now because since I am going to put a binding border all around the wallet, I will be using a regular sized stitch all the way around the wallet. So right now this isn't a super important stitch, it's just to keep everything in place. So I'm just using the stay stitch to attach both of the wallets on either side of the big rectangle. This is making the inside of the wallet. And I had to be careful about remembering to always tuck that strap on the inside so that it wouldn't get stuck in the stitching. After everything was attached, I trimmed off a little bit of excess denim that was sticking out and tested it out. It looks pretty good. The lining was just kind of puckering when I was folding it up, so I found the middle of the wallet and just kind of creased it and just did a line of stitching straight down the middle so that it was an extra way to keep the lining in place so that it wouldn't pucker when it was being folded. And now the final detail is just adding on the border all the way around the binding. I just cut a strip of denim about 1.5 inches it was, and I'm just attaching it like I would bias tape to the outside of the wallet. The only difference is that this is not already pre-creased like a regular bias tape would be, but the same concept. I'm putting right sides together, stitching around the entire edge, and then I will fold it over to the other side and do the same thing. Whenever I get to a corner, I just kind of fold it into this 90-degree triangle type of thing and hope for the best. And then I did leave a little tail at the end after I was sewing so that I'll be able to finish it up nicely. Once I got everything stitched up, I flipped the binding right side out and the corners actually turned out really good. So I'm flipping it all to the right side and then I'm just going to fold under the excess fabric and stitch down the edge there. Hoping for a nice clean finish for all the borders. The binding is ending up being about 1/4 of an inch thick on either side of the wallet, on the outside and the inside. Stitching this down on the right side was a little bit harder just because I was more stressed about it looking perfect. But it came out okay, and then I just needed to attach the last part of the snap onto the little strap. So I hammered that on and it works. Yay, the wallet is looking good. Final detail is just finishing off the edge of that little strap, and I just folded it over and then zigzag stitched it because I have a big zigzag theme on this wallet already. And now it is finished. The final result. I think it turned out cute. I like it. I like all the colors. The snap, I think next time I'll put it through the denim and the outside layer just to make it a little more sturdy. But I think it's good enough. It's just a heavy duty snap, so I kind of have to yank hard at it. So I think next time I'll put it through 2 layers of fabric instead of just the one outside shell. But ta-da! And I like the over clip because I just tried sticking everything from my old wallet, all the cards and whatever, in here, and it got pretty bulky, so the snap closure over the top does a good job at holding it all together. And now I have a wallet that works again, which is exciting. I won't lose any of my valuables. So yeah, this is just more validation for me to continue hoarding every last bit of scraps that I have. For better or for worse, they make cute results, even though the projects are endless and the scrap pile turns more and more mountainous by the minute. But yeah, scrap idea if you have lots of little strips of fabric, or if you do upcycling and you end up with a lot of hems of old clothes, you could make a wallet. Thank you for joining me. It's been lovely. Goodbye.